Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery podcast. Today we are with the one, the only John Kennedy. John, how are you today, sir?
I'm good, David. Thanks for having me on your podcast today. I'm excited.
You got it, man. How does it feel to be part of the MAGA team? I'm just kidding,
It's,
man.
I vote.
It's-
I mean, today's the day I voted, and we were joking on the pre-call that with my name being John Kennedy, I think it was good timing, fortuitous timing to have John Kennedy on the podcast on election day.
yeah. Well, and funny, I was asking you earlier, any relation to the
So the boring answer is technically yes. Like
oh,
technically, and it's a very distant. So there's no like I'm not showing up to their Palm Beach house on the water and getting a warm welcome by them or anything like that. It's very distant. But I like to tell fun stories depending on, if I've had a cocktail or two. I like to tell a fun story about our relation and kind of embellish a little. But the real crazy thing, man, is that my wife's name is Jackie. And that's the
oh
thing
wow.
people just can't get over. They're like, no way. Like John and Jackie Kennedy, no way. And I'm so used to it. I just don't think about it anymore. But anytime I meet someone new, they're like, what? Is this real?
That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, hey, anyway, it's an interesting day.
It is.
We're not going to get into politics on the podcast. I always try to avoid that. But it's definitely interesting. And honestly, I still like literally right after this, I got to go and vote. So
You got to.
yeah,
Got to exercise that right.
I've got to handle that. But today, what we're going to talk about is your money story, and that's really what caught my attention. And so, John, just to tell our audience a little bit about you. You are a co-founder, My Passion Driven, Deeply Rooted Desire. Wait, hold on. That didn't. Hold on. You know what? Just introduce yourself, brother.
Yeah,
Tell
man.
us
I
who
got
you
you.
are and what you do.
I got you. I got you. Yep. So I'm a certified financial planner, which in my world is it's an important distinction, not the most important, but it's an important one. Co-founder of a firm called Candor Path Financial here in Orlando, Florida. So I've been in the industry for 16 years, 10 years into it, had my Jerry Maguire moment where I said, I'm done with this. I'm taking my ball and going home. I'm going to do this my own way and start a firm. And so it's been fun, man. It's been a great journey, as a firm. Not that anybody listening to this would care, but these are like industry metrics that matter. We manage about 300 million in assets. And when I say that, I mean like liquid assets. So think like IRAs, Roth IRAs, not illiquid stuff where, a lot of your listeners have rental properties and investment properties and stuff like that. That's another side of someone's net worth. And so just like through these conversations with folks, we work with predominantly business owners and early retirees. So for me, an early retiree is defined as anybody that retires before the age of 65. I know that doesn't sound early, but if you retire at 58 or 62, there's decisions you have to make that are unique to your scenario. And so we work with folks on that. And as a result of it, we've just had so many conversations with people about understanding their money story, like the things that have happened to them, their past experiences that have maybe shaped who they are or how they view money, and really just try to help them figure that out and maybe break through some of those barriers and make good financial choices.
Man, I wrote a lot down. So
Thanks.
appreciate that. And yeah, that's what actually attracted me or caught my attention with having you on the show, talking about people's money, not just their story, but their choices, their mindsets behind it, how it is impacting everybody, and most of it we're being impacted unconsciously, right? Like it's this thing going on. So talk to us first about like your money story course. You have a course, so explain what that is, and then we'll just break that down a bit.
Yeah, sounds good, David. So it's yourmoneystory.co, co. And it's probably like a 2 to 3 week self-guided course. And the idea of it is we start with, it's a series of short videos. And then we sort of start with your money personality and identifying that, and then making some tangible action as a result of identifying that. So like, great, I understand that I'm a compulsive spender, or that I'm a thrill seeker, or that I'm indifferent to money. Like, I understand that about myself. Great. Now what the heck do I do with that information? And so then we guide you through a series of videos. The first series is called Your Money Flows, which is all about how to track your cash flow, how to break down your spending into 3 buckets: fixed, flexible, and future. And then the next segment of that is called Your Money Grows, which is then like, great, once we've figured out how much we're spending and where money's going, let's prioritize where and how we're going to save that. And then figure out a way to automate that. And then the final segment is called Your Wealth Shows, which is then trying to educate the listeners in this e-course about making intelligent investment decisions and how to automate those things as well. So it's very, in some ways, it starts off very surface level. I think it's like some of the basics of spending and budgeting, but then it goes very in depth and specific, because like, what good is a course if it's not going to actually teach you and give you some good tangible answers on things? And so we wanted to kind of make sure that we were able to do that and deliver on it, because I realized, like, we have a podcast too. It's called the Above Board Podcast. And we have a lot of listeners that don't necessarily want to engage with me. Like, they don't want to like call me and have all these meetings and pay a financial planner, but they do want some advice and they need some direction. And so it's kind of built on that idea to help people.
So why do most people come to you? Well, there's two things. There's I heard recently that and you know the number better than me, but there's only a very small percentage of Americans actually have enough money set aside right now to retire. Is that true? And what's the percentage, and why is that?
Oh my word. Yeah. I mean, the average American family is saving less than 5% of their salary. And so when you think about that and you couple that with these concerns that a lot of Americans have about, is Social Security going to be there for me? Is it not? Listen, if you're 60 years old, the likelihood of that being an actual concern for you is low. If you're in your 30s or 40s, we plan assuming it's not going to be there. So like, the importance of doing the planning yourself is so critical, because like back in the 80s and prior, you had pensions. You go work for a company. That was like the norm. Like, you work for a company, you work there for 30 plus years, you get a pension, you build it up, and then you live off of that in retirement. That's all changed. All that responsibility is put on your shoulders. And when we're saving 5% as a national average, man, that is not enough. And frankly, the amount of people I see that come to us, and through conversations, we see these scenarios and we're like, man, your expenses are growing by 15% a year and your income's growing by 5%. That a solution requires awareness.
How much should people be saving, John? Like what's a number?
So I typically tell people between 15 to 20% of their gross earnings, which sometimes I get looks like that's too aggressive. I get people going, whoa, what are we talking about? I think for your listeners, maybe we tweak that and customize that to say, okay, it's not the average W-2 employee that needs to save 15 to 20%. For your listeners, there might be a split of reinvesting back into their company or into their own growth and development. You're your biggest asset. But we should be setting aside 15 to 20% that needs to be reinvested into something. And that's hard to do, man. Like that's the problem. It's like solving that equation. And I tell people this all the time, like that, you're not going to figure it out overnight. And you're going to be really pissed at me if I come in and tell you, you need to stop going to Starbucks and you need to stop paying for lunch. And you need to if I tell people that falls on deaf ears. No one wants to hear that advice. It's a slow build. Maybe your income grows by 10% next year. The goal is to recapture 100% of that 10%. Like it's a slow, you got to work towards it. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah. And I got to imagine right now, just the state of our economy. A lot of people are feeling pain and pressure, and I would imagine, not being a financial advisor, but the first thing they're gonna see, they cut me. Like, I'm a trainer. I help them with sales. I help them make money, and I'm one of the. It makes no sense. Like they're they start struggling, and instead of going in on that, they say, oh, I gotta. Anyway, that's another whole podcast.
No, but that's a good point, though. No. I would like to actually go down that path, but we can keep going with your question.
Well, it's probably similar to you, right? The first thing they're gonna do is say, okay, I don't have the extra money now to invest. Instead of going out there and figuring out, okay, how do I use this as an opportunity to make more money, right? Or anyway, that you tell us. I started asking you a question and answered it myself.
Well, I think something that I've learned over the years and working with folks is that we have this this internal belief system that, and so many people might use the excuse, I'm not good at money. Like I avoid finances, I'm not good at money. And so what do we do if if our belief system is built on that? We freaking avoid it. Like we avoid it. We stay as far away from it as we can. And I think part of like why I'm motivated.
Describe avoid it though. Like what are some
head in the
ways
sand, bills
okay.
are stacking up in the mail.
Okay.
They stay on your desk. You know that credit card statement's there and it's due, but
Don't open it.
You don't want to open it.
They don't open it.
Yeah, you don't open it. You don't log in and check your 401k. You don't want to see what your student loan balance is. You avoid the amount of conversations I have when I first start talking to somebody and they're like, you know what, we've got credit card debt. I don't know how much it is. And for me in the finance world, my mind is blown by that. But I get it. Like you're not good at it. You don't like it. So you avoid it. And I think what I'm here to try to implore people with is being bad at money math is just not a good enough reason to avoid it. Like because it affects our lives, no matter what industry we're in, if we're in real estate, if finance, it doesn't matter. Like you have to understand, you don't have to be as good at it as a financial planner is, but you can, through just a little bit of education and work, you can be good at it. And so I think I kind of trailed off on that, but based on the statement you made, David, a lot of people will make decisions like, I'm going to cut my personal coach, or I'm going to cut my, my financial planner in order to cut expenses, but they're potentially in that scenario cutting the wrong expense. That's what I mean by reinvesting in yourself. I mentioned like probably 5 or so minutes ago of like investing in yourself might look like hiring a business coach. I've had my business partner and I have had a business coach since 2019. Not for any other reason than we need somebody to talk to twice a month. And I joke that he's like our business therapist, but like we just need someone to talk to bounce ideas off of and make sure we're on the right track and like flush out an idea. And you're on an island as a business owner a lot of times, so you need that. So anyway, I digress. But you made that comment, and I think that's what I think of when I think of that. It's like we're making we're going to cut an expense, so we might cut our business coach, but we're not willing to cut YouTube TV or Spotify or all these other things that add up to a serious amount of money every month.
Starbucks, yeah.
Funny,
somebody sent us a gift card for Starbucks, which was really nice, and $50. So we went yesterday, and we literally it was like $34 for my wife and I and two young kids.
It's painful. It's so expensive now.
Well, everything is though. But so to that point, how does somebody get beyond that 5%? Or I'm guessing there's people right now that aren't even doing 5%.
Yeah, I think that's the portion of the course, yourmoneystory.co, where it's called Your Money Flows. So we kind of build a system, and we have some technology that we use to track it online. So you can like link up your accounts and track and all that good stuff. But I don't know how your listeners are going to receive this. I am a pen and paper kind of guy, but most of my life is now like Excel and Google Sheets. Like that's my zen, David. I could live in an Excel spreadsheet. Jeez. And I love that. You don't like that?
Not me. No, not at all.
Oh, I love it. I mean, that's like a finance.
That's mind numbing for me.
Yeah. So that's like the finance guy in me. Sure. So on the Your Money Flows portion, we teach you how to track your cash flow. And we do require a little bit of homework because you got to go back the last at least 30 or 60 days and do the work to see, like, if you can't answer to me, how much did I spend on Amazon this month? Or how much did we spend on groceries this month? I can tell you that number because for us that by this point in our life, it's automated. Like I know what we spend every week and every month on these things. And so if you don't know the answer to that, this is not an exercise of shame. It's the reason why you should really focus on trying to figure out how to track this. So we break it down into 3 buckets: your fixed expenses, the ones that recur every single month, rent, utilities, and so on. Your flexible expenses, which might be groceries, might be gas. You're going to incur them, but they're going to fluctuate in value, and your spending can influence that. And then your future expenses, prepping for a vacation, a new car, whatever. And then breaking those down and then saving each week into specific buckets. It's sort of, I mean, if I were to try to simplify it down, it's the old school like cash envelope system, but digitized. It's doing it in 2024 and creating metrics so that you're knowing where money's going. And for what it's worth, like you asked about, how does somebody go from 5% to 20%. Again, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's this proactive system where you can kind of create rules around yourself to say, like, this is what we're going to focus on spending. And I'm huge on this concept of, I don't know if you've heard this term before, but it's like spending up versus spending down. Have you heard of this term?
I have not.
So our economic system is very much built towards the idea of incentivizing borrowing and leverage, right? Like there's preferred debt, right? Like there's intelligent debt where we start a business or we go buy a home that we need to have versus accruing consumer debt because systems incentivize it. Like, how many times do you hear people like, oh, I got this card, it's like 5% cash back. And so we're thinking that because we have this credit card that has all these points involved, that that's a good thing. But studies have shown statistically you spend 15 to 20% more per year because you have that cash incentive, that 5% cash back or those reward points. You spend more than you ever save or than you ever get back. And so this idea of visually seeing an account balance spend up, like a credit card balance going up, you're disassociated from that because you're like, oh, future David, future John will deal with that. Like, we'll pay that off. We'll pay that off in the months to come.
Yeah.
Versus spending down from a debit card where, holy smokes, now all of a sudden your accountability is at an all-time high. Like, if that number goes to zero, it can't go negative. I can't afford for that to happen. So I got to be very mindful of what I'm spending. It's forced accountability, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think they make it too easy now to get people to get themselves in debt, which I mean, you probably know better than me, but I feel like that's an issue right now. Credit card debt is at an all-time high, right? Is that's a fact, I believe.
Average American 2 months away from bankruptcy.
Wow.
2 months. 2 months. That's awful. We got to do better. And I think that's why I'm so motivated by these conversations, because I like helping people figure that out.
To that point, I mean, I know, used to years ago do the Dave Ramsey. I'm sure you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, right?
Yep.
Get out of debt. Are you like, so, and let me just back up to something you said about the credit card, the points thing. Like, this was me, for a long time. Like, I actually did make my minimum payment every month or the maximum payment. So that, not the minimum, I would pay off have an American Express, pay the full balance every month. So technically there was no fees. There was the annual fee, but other than that, but then eventually that stopped, right? Like, okay, so now everything that you've earned in those 5% rewards or is washed once you start letting that balance move into the next month, right?
And good of you to pay it off every month, so you weren't paying an interest, but the likelihood still is that you're spending more over the course of the year than you probably needed to, right?
Yeah, I never thought of it like that. I mean, I guess so. I mean, I use a card for, I have two different businesses, and I have each business has its own credit card that we use for the business. So I don't know, you may say that's crazy, but that's another conversation you and I can have. Where was I going with that though? Credit card debt. So the David Ramsey thing, what would you say to people now? Should they start like, hey, first step, get rid of this credit card debt. First step, start investing. Let's get that 5% to 20%. Like, what is your advice to people listening to this right now, especially as we're here on election day? So hopefully there's going to be some new environment, we'll say, coming, and more prosperity, I guess. Who knows? But yes, depending on who you're talking to, there is prosperity out there, right?
Sure. I would say first step is create awareness. Like, yes, I can tell you the tangible things, like you should have 3 to 6 months in a savings account as an emergency fund. You should pay off your debt. I think those things are obvious. For me, it's just not a good enough excuse to be like, I don't know how much I spent last month. Not like I paid off my credit card, but like, I don't know. It is what it is. And that's not a good enough reason to just not know. And you know what? If you're saving 20% a year, then you're allowed to have that excuse. Maybe, like, I know this is like kind of a weird way to think of it, but like, if you're saving 20%, I don't care how much you're you're spending, if you're saving 20% of your income, you're doing something right. You have accountability in your system. But if you're not able to, at the end of the month, figure out like, gosh, I don't know, I only got a couple bucks to get in my 401k or my Roth IRA or my kids 529 plan or whatever those vehicles are, which we could talk about that too. But if you're struggling to find that, you got to create awareness around your spending. So like the idea of paying off your credit cards is useful. I would argue that it's more important if you're trying to make decisions for new dollars, and that is, do I pay off consumer credit card debt or do I invest it in an IRA? I might make if those are the only two facts, without knowing other variables there, I might make the decision or the advice that it makes more sense to pay off the debt because you're probably at 18 to 24% APR. So I think you should pay that off versus not knowing the assurance of the market growth over the next year. No one can predict that, of course. But the bigger thing is, how do we stay out of that cycle? Like if you have consumer debt, yeah, pay it off. Great. What's to stop you from racking it up again? And I've seen that happen so many times where like clients will create goals, get it knocked out, and then a year later we're sitting in the same problem. And what they actually tend to do, some of my clients, is they'll borrow from their bonus at the end of the year, the beginning of the next year. So they kind of like accrue debt throughout the year, and then they take the whole bonus and pay it off. And they're in this constant cycle of playing catch up. And what we want to do is kind of implore people to like prepare for point of purchase and then have it paid off, instead of point of purchase occurs and now we're figuring out how to pay it off over the next 12 months. So I would say awareness. I know it's kind of maybe a cheeseball answer, but it is an important one.
Well, I think awareness is the key on any change. First step, right, on anything. Become aware of the challenge first. Admit it, right? Acceptance.
Yeah,
I'm in a 12-step program, and first step is it's always acceptance, right?
Yeah, but it's uncomfortable, isn't it, David?
Yeah.
Like you talked about it on your podcast. The most recent one I listened to, I don't know if it was the most recent one you published, but it was a few podcasts ago, where you kind of talked about like regulating your internal thermostat.
Yeah.
And it applies in this scenario. You like if you dial the temperature up and you're kind of going hard for a while, but then like for whatever reason things happen and then you just kind of get back to baseline, like you go back and you're like
Uncomfortable.
Yeah, like it takes work to regulate that thermostat and lean in a little bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's easy. It's easy to convert back when you're doing something that's outside of your normal comfort zone, then there's a lot of pressure, right? And when there's pressure on you, you're feeling uncomfortable, right? That's why they call it the comfort zone. So a thermostat, what it does is it just will kick in and it'll make us do something to bring us back to our comfort zone. Like, well, let me just go to Starbucks and spend $50, or let me go online and buy something that I don't really need, that's what a lot of us do. But the context of the conversation was really in sales.
It was
where people start sabotaging themselves when they start getting a greater result, and there's more responsibility now. You have to operate at a higher level. You have to show up. You have to do things. So, but thank you for listening to that. That was a really fun episode.
Well, because to me, it translates so well, though, David. It translates to finances, to that point that you made. It's like, you know what? I'm doing really good. I deserve to, and then insert whatever that excuse is. Like, I deserve to go to Starbucks and spend $50. And then like you do that a few times and you're like, dang, like I was going to save $300 this month and now I can't. Like, where did it go?
Yeah. Well, so we're talking to somebody who literally went from closing like 1 or 2 houses a month to closed 4 and then 6 and then 8. Like he was doing great, but he was so far out of his comfort zone. He just went and completely sabotaged himself. So then brought himself right back down to 0 and then 0 to the next month. You know what I mean? Just because, and although he was complaining, but now he was back in his comfort zone. Yeah. It was easy. Oh, I'm going to meetings. I'm at office meetings in the morning and I'm doing all this other stuff. It was kind of funny. So yeah, if you haven't listened to that episode on comfort zone, make sure you go back. I don't remember exactly what number episode it is, but we had a really great conversation about people's comfort zone and their thermostat and all that good stuff. All right. Talk to us about, you mentioned automation a few times, like automating. How does somebody automate their finances?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think it's a necessity in today's world. I mean, you hear that term automation is kind of like overused perhaps, but it helps you, like, once you put the system in place. So for example, once you know how much you're spending on your fixed expenses and your flexible expenses, and then you know how much you can put towards things for the future, draw a line in the sand and say, okay, if I can, for the next 90 days, if I can manually do this, then I've created a habit where I'm making up numbers here, but I'm saving $600 a month to future things. Then the next step, in my opinion, is to automate it. So no longer, and I think actually it parlays very well to your conversation about your internal thermostat, like the self-sabotaging thing. So you're no longer allowing yourself to make these decisions each month. Like, I'm committed to saving $600, but this thing happened, I'm not going to do it. You pay yourself first. You have it set up on the first of each month. You have that automated and going into your investment accounts or going into your savings account. A lot of people that have 401ks that may be listening to this, like that's coming out pre-tax, payroll deductions. It's coming out before it even hits their bank account. So it's automated for them. The hard part is when it's a 529 plan for your kids or a Roth IRA or investing in yourself or like investing back in the business. The hard part is like sticking to it. And for me, I find that automation is what makes that happen. So I know this is going to sound super crazy and OCD, but for us and our family, this is a weekly automation. Every week, I have a certain allotment go towards savings. I have a certain allotment go towards my fixed expenses and my flexible expenses. So this bucket of money for flexible expenses, this is probably my favorite example, actually, is my flexible expenses. Like, I know what my wife and I have to spend that week for our flexible expenses. And so if it's a heavy week and we go to Target and we have all these like purchases that pop up and kids' school stuff comes up, then like we're not going to go on date night that Saturday. And that sucks. But like, I know that that's the number that's in the account. It's already automated and it's happening. So we just adjust. You just kind of get used to adjusting to that system. And so the automation, just you acclimate to it. So you dial that internal thermostat up a little bit higher, then you acclimate, and then it becomes the norm. And that's what I think we're talking about, is like create a proactive system and then just let those rules run by itself. Just let it run itself. Just let it operate. Smart. And we look at it once a year, David. So, at the beginning of each year, at the end of the year, my wife hates these conversations, but, we sit down and we do talk finances, and we spend probably 90 minutes to 2 hours going through it all, figuring out, hey, what increases can we make? What can we do better? Our income is going up. So let's I love gamifying it too, man. So like if our income goes up in a year going into the next year, I'll say like, all right, let's save 50% of that increase and let's spend 50% of that increase on some cool stuff we haven't done yet. Yeah, it makes it fun.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, back in the day when we were looking for talented, when I was running my real estate team, we would bring on agents and looking for really productive, and we'd say, listen, here's what we did last year, here's the goal. Anything above what we did last year, you get to keep 50% of the addition, right? And you could see people that were motivated, they would say, oh yeah, my God, that's amazing, yeah, let's do that, right? So I think it's called profits interest, right? Essentially, I
love that. I love that idea. Yes.
So let me, and it's funny, we have date night this weekend, by the way. So I'm excited for date
Where are you
night.
going?
So we're going, my wife, I told her wherever she wants to go. We're going to Providence. We live in Massachusetts, but we're going to go to Providence, have a nice Italian dinner. So wherever she wants to go, she will probably wants to bring us back to like Pennsylvania. I can't. Where we used to go when we first started dating, 17 years ago. So, but it's funny because as I think about listening, or as I was listening, I was thinking about us and like I am like, we got to go to BJ's and get all the big stuff. Yeah. So we can save, cause you can save hundreds of dollars by doing it that way. Like once a month I go to BJ's and I'll get all the stuff we need. Mm-hmm. But yet we always butt heads with this, cause she likes to just run out to the grocery store every other day and, spend $100 here, $100 here, $100, and I'm just like, we gotta go to BJ's. So it's kind of funny. Is that part of the process too that you help people with, like getting them on the same page with like even something as simple as planning out our shop? Like we have 2 kids at home, right? So we go through food, right?
Yeah, that's the beautiful dynamic of a couple, though. You're having to make these decisions that like you see life a little bit differently. That's a micro example, but like you see it differently. Like, hey, let's save and do this big like once a month shopping at BJ's to save money. And for
Oh, the
her,
big stuff, like because
yeah,
there's stuff we can get there that other stuff we don't need to get at like whatever food she goes store she goes to, like the most
yeah.
expensive ones, right? But it's it's all good.
But for
Sorry.
her though, she values convenience. Like
Mm,
this is where we talk about like your money personality and how that kind of informs your decision making. Like it sounds like you might be and just this might be way off base, so you could tell me, but like based on that one example you gave, you might be like a super saver personality where like you invest in your business, you're working, you're growing, but like on the family side, like we want to save money. I don't want to like make bad financial decisions. Whereas not that your wife is a spender, but she values the conveniences that come with certain things in life. And like what, so I'll take it one next step. In
yeah.
our house, sometimes we debate over having our groceries delivered versus picking them up. And
Mm,
like at first, I was like, this is crazy. Like the price tag that gets added to grocery delivery is astronomical. And my wife was like, yeah, but I'm able to do XYZ. I'm able to get these things more done that I value more importantly to my life. And that saves me the time to do the grocery shopping. I thought, damn, she's right. Like I get it. I see
true.
that
Yeah.
point. So I think it's like it's just what you guys value. And we talk through that with families because that's just the reality. There's more extreme examples that can be given, but for what we see in terms of households and how people view debt and spending and saving and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, like I tell people a lot of times like it's a beautiful marriage when you do have two different personalities, because if you have two savers, that's boring as all get out. Like
Yeah.
it sucks. Like you're not, and like so I'm the saver, my wife is the spender, and she makes our life fun. She does, because we go do cool stuff. And I would never look up a trip to go to Italy and do some of the things I would never look those things up and do that because that's not my style. But she wants that and likes it, and I've had awesome experiences because of it. So you find a way to work it out as a
Yeah.
couple.
Yeah. We worked it out. I think I get the big stuff once a month, the beef and the chicken and
Yeah.
the salmon and all that stuff. And the big thing of cranberry juice as opposed to the little ones at the store, and then she handles everything else. And we have
Well,
good food. She's a good cook, by the way. So she's a really
yeah.
good cook. Yeah.
Yeah. Shout out to your wife. It
Yeah.
sounds like you like are very healthy in the
Oh yeah.
dietary things that choices you make. I mean, you had Gary Brecka on the podcast. That's not by
Yeah.
accident. So
Yeah, Gary's a really good
yeah.
guy. He's been blessed. All right. So what did we not talk about? Actually, you know what? I got a few good people here with us
Yeah.
on Clubhouse. We got Dora Maria, we got Victor. You guys been listening for a while. You got any question? We got about another 10 minutes before we got to wrap. But do you guys have any questions from Clubhouse? All right. Well, doesn't look like they have
That's
any
good.
questions. So
I
if
was
anybody,
hoping no one was going to ask me to predict the markets after the election. That's always a
oh man,
scary one.
yeah. Well, I guess we'll know more. We'll know more. Hopefully tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I mean, the thing
Hopefully.
I'll say about that is markets hate uncertainty.
Mm.
So the more there's uncertainty, if it's not a clear direction of, one way or the other, then, the markets tend to go a little unstable in
Well,
those
it's funny
environments.
you say that because we've been talking about that, and there's so many people that are saying, "Oh, I don't want. I'm waiting until after the election. I'm waiting until I." And it just drives me crazy. Like, what's going to happen after the election? Absolutely nothing. Like,
Yeah.
no difference whatsoever. But like you just said, there's a little uncertainty in their mind, and it's preventing them from. I mean, there's certainly is going to be some things that will change. But for the average person, there's probably not going to be a lot of things that are going to be too different.
If you're investing in the
Sorry to
market,
say it like that, but
no, you're right though, David. Like if you're investing in the market for the long term, just and whatever long term is defined as you, but for me, I would say, if retirement's 5, 10+ years away for you, just stay status quo. Keep your plan in motion. The biggest mistake you can make is like not continuing to save and do the things that you've been doing that got you to where you are. And by the way, I have a chart. Maybe I'll share it afterwards with you, but there's some good charts on election years and markets, and just really the idea that like the markets do better under one president, like under under Republican versus Democrat and whatnot. But the actual reality is the markets go up in all climates. It's just a matter of how much and if we're doing the right things to stay invested in the market. So people get scared, man. COVID happened. And I mean, we were doing meetings on Saturdays and Sundays with clients when COVID happened. If you remember that, which I'm sure you very vividly do, the stock market dropped over 30% in 3 weeks. That was unprecedented. Unprecedented. I would go for walks in my neighborhood, and neighbors who knew what I did, they were like, man, the Dow's going to zero. Like, what's going to happen? Like, the world's going to end. And I just said, I don't think so. And by the end of 2020, markets were positive. Like fairly substantially positive too. Like, it wasn't like it was up like 2 or 3%. I mean, it was like plus 10%, depending on how your portfolio is invested. So, I think it's a good micro example of staying the course and not letting volatility scare you out of investing.
Yeah, it's same argument I have when people complain about real estate prices going up and down. Well, go look at a house in the 50s. You could buy a house for $25,000. Now what's that same house? $350,000, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it just consistently is going to keep moving up. All right. Anything I missed? What didn't I ask that I should have asked?
I don't think so. It was a blast. And like I said, the e-course is at no cost. We just built it. Actually, we just got it approved this past month. My industry is heavily regulated and has a lot of compliance. So we had to jump through hoops to get it approved. So again, yourmoneystory.co. And 2 to 3 week self-guided course. For now, it's no cost because it's just we wanted to be able to provide that to our podcast audience. But it's if you're looking at it as something to help you not do the hard work, it's not going to be your answer. There's no silver bullet to figuring out how to save and invest and all that stuff. But if you want to get educated, figure out how to budget better, and then what we didn't talk about, David, is the very specific tangibles of different types of investment accounts, Roth 401ks, traditional 401ks, HSAs, which I love an HSA. I mean, it's the only thing in the U.S. tax code that you put money in tax deferred and you take it out tax free. It's killer.
Yeah.
So all we go through all that stuff in the course.
Yeah, they're going to call you for that conversation specifically. So how do people get in touch with you? What's the best way besides getting your free course? What's a good way to get in touch with you, John?
Yeah, social media. Follow us on social media at CandorPath, CandorPath. So at CandorPath on any of the YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook, and so on.
Awesome. And final question: what is CandorPath? What does that mean?
Well, so I love the word candor, which means honesty and transparency, and that's one of our core values as a firm. And so I really wanted that to reflect in our company name, because we're in an industry similar to you, David, where it's like you've got the used car salesman mentality a little bit in some of our industry, where some people are pushy and salesy and they try to sell a financial product to be the solution, and that's not it. People need advice, and I'm sure you have the same thing. You've got a lot of good realtors you work with, but there's always the few that do things a little differently, and so my industry has a lot of people that do things differently, and my industry is known for that. You think back to the Bernie Madoffs and the things that we hear about and know about, that concerns people. So for me, it was a representation of one of our core values. So Candor Path, your path towards financial freedom.
That's awesome. Well, so I was I started on the phones 36 years ago, cold calling for Kirby. And then after that, I was in a call center. Remember the call? You probably don't remember this. You look younger than me, but they used to have call centers where you would call people and get them to do a credit card application over the phone. Thank God that's not legal anymore. But that was what happened 25 years ago. And I learned to get really, really good at that. But then something clicked where I said, this doesn't seem right. This nice little lady I'm talking to may not even realize what's happening. So I quit that. Yeah. But I learned that, and I was a hard closer for a long time. But as I've gotten older, man, I just said, I don't know, it doesn't feel right anymore. So
yeah,
I love the Candor Path thing, and I'm working on my next book, which is going to be something to do with sales for nice people, something along those lines, because I remember I did a keynote in Texas about 4 months ago, and somebody had gotten up and they said, well, I'm too nice to be a salesperson. And that kind of clicked, like when they said that. Like I've heard that, but and so there's still that, like you said, that stigma out there that somehow you got to be pushy or manipulative, or come that's not sales.
Yeah,
that doesn't well, it doesn't have to be sales.
No, it doesn't. And there's such a thing as ethical sales, and it's that there's a term for it that's called ethical persuasion, which I don't know. His name's Brian Ahern, and I think I'd love to connect you guys because you would like this guy a lot. Brian's been on my podcast before, and he has a book where he talks about the power of persuasion, but for the use of ethical standard and what that means. I mean, there's really a movement behind that idea. And so I love connecting with people that align with that, hence the name, candor being in our name. So,
yeah, I think people's antennas now are up they pick up on that right away. If you're trying to manipulate them in some way, or people are looking for to trust. I think that's the key now. They want to feel like they can trust you. So awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you. It was great to connect with you. Thank you for being on the show. And yeah, love that connection. And again, thank you, man.
Cool. Thanks, David. Appreciate you.